Welcome to Iraqi Dinar News, where you receive real and authentic updates about the Iraqi dinar. If you want to stay informed with moment-by-moment developments, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Today we are taking a closer look at an opinion that has generated considerable discussion among Iraqi dinar followers. The analysis centers on the relationship between Iraq's political progress, the completion of its government, and the country's long-term economic reforms. While many investors closely monitor every political development for clues about Iraq's financial future, it is important to separate personal analysis from confirmed government policy. In this video, we will carefully examine these ideas, place them into a broader economic context, and discuss what they could mean for Iraq's banking sector, investment climate, and the Iraqi dinar over both the short and long term. The latest commentary suggests that no immediate change to Iraq's exchange rate should be expected while Iraqi officials are engaged in meetings in Washington, D.C. Instead, the focus remains on domestic political developments, particularly the completion of Iraq's government and cabinet. This viewpoint argues that finishing the government is a necessary milestone before Iraq can confidently move into what many describe as its next economic phase. It is important to emphasize that this is an analytical opinion rather than an official announcement. Neither the Central Bank of Iraq nor the Iraqi government has publicly confirmed that a cabinet vote automatically triggers any future exchange rate adjustment. However, political stability has historically been one of the most important factors influencing investor confidence, financial reform, and international economic cooperation. Whenever Iraq enters an important diplomatic period, especially meetings involving international financial institutions, global investors naturally pay close attention. Washington meetings often involve discussions about banking modernization, anti-money laundering standards, financial transparency, investment opportunities, energy cooperation, and economic partnerships. These meetings are significant because they demonstrate Iraq's willingness to strengthen relationships with major international organizations and foreign governments. However, diplomatic meetings themselves do not automatically change exchange rate policy. Exchange rate decisions are generally determined by monetary authorities after evaluating inflation, foreign exchange reserves, domestic liquidity, economic growth, fiscal policy, and financial stability. These decisions require careful planning and coordination rather than being tied to a single international visit. The commentary also argues that Iraq's cabinet must first be completed before the country can move into its next stage of development. Looking at Iraq's recent history, there is logic behind the broader principle that political stability supports economic reform. Governments that are fully functioning generally have greater capacity to pass legislation, approve budgets, implement banking reforms, negotiate international agreements, and execute long-term development plans. A complete government provides continuity for ministries responsible for finance, planning, oil, trade, investment, and economic development. When ministerial positions remain vacant or political negotiations continue for extended periods, decision-making can slow considerably. Major infrastructure projects may experience delays, investment approvals can take longer, and economic legislation may remain pending. From an investor's perspective, political certainty often reduces risk. Domestic businesses become more comfortable making long-term investments. Foreign companies gain greater confidence when institutional leadership appears stable. International financial organizations also prefer dealing with governments capable of implementing agreed reforms consistently over several years. This is why many analysts continue watching Iraq's political landscape alongside its economic indicators. Political developments do not determine exchange rates directly, but they frequently influence the broader environment in which monetary policy operates. Another important element of the discussion is the statement that Iraq's new administration will guide the country into its next phase. While different analysts may define this next phase differently, it generally refers to continuing financial modernization, expanding private sector activity, improving banking services, diversifying government revenue beyond oil, strengthening regulatory institutions, and attracting greater foreign investment. Over the past several years, Iraq has introduced numerous initiatives designed to modernize its financial system. These include encouraging electronic payment systems, improving banking compliance, expanding digital financial services, strengthening anti-money laundering frameworks, and increasing transparency across financial institutions. These reforms may not always attract dramatic headlines, but they represent the foundation of long-term economic development. Modern banking systems create greater confidence among businesses, facilitate international trade, improve tax collection, reduce cash dependence, and support sustainable economic growth. For Iraqi dinar followers, these structural reforms often receive less attention than exchange rate discussions. Yet many economists would argue that institutional improvements are actually more important over the long run, because they strengthen the underlying economy that supports the national currency. The commentary also suggests that the government remains incomplete because Iraq is not yet ready for a revaluation but could be preparing for one in the future. Here it is essential to distinguish between opinion and verified fact. No official Iraqi authority has announced plans for a future currency revaluation linked to cabinet completion. Exchange rate policy remains under the authority of the Central Bank of Iraq, which has consistently emphasized monetary stability and orderly financial management. Therefore, any prediction regarding timing should be viewed as speculation rather than confirmation. Nevertheless, analysts often examine political readiness because large-scale economic reforms generally require coordination between multiple government institutions. Finance ministries, central banks, legislative bodies, and executive leadership frequently work together when implementing significant financial changes. Political coordination therefore remains relevant, even if it does not directly determine exchange rate decisions. One reason political stability matters is because economic confidence depends heavily on predictable governance. International investors generally evaluate several indicators before committing capital to developing markets. These indicators include legal certainty, government effectiveness, banking stability, infrastructure development, security conditions, regulatory transparency, and macroeconomic management. When these factors improve together, investment typically becomes more attractive. Increased investment can support job creation, infrastructure expansion, industrial development, and stronger economic output. Over time, these improvements may strengthen the broader economic environment in which the national currency operates. Another point worth considering is Iraq's continued effort to integrate more deeply into the global financial system. International banking relationships require compliance with global standards involving financial reporting, anti-money laundering measures, sanctions screening, cybersecurity, and banking supervision. As Iraqi banks continue adopting international standards, they become better positioned to facilitate cross-border trade and financial transactions. This process can improve confidence among foreign financial institutions and multinational corporations, considering business opportunities inside Iraq. International integration is therefore not simply about currency discussions. It involves creating a financial ecosystem capable of supporting modern commerce, investment, trade finance, and digital banking services. For Iraqi citizens, these reforms have practical implications beyond exchange rate speculation. Improved banking services can provide easier access to financing, electronic payments, savings products, mortgages, business loans, and digital financial tools. These developments contribute to broader economic inclusion and encourage greater participation in the formal economy. The banking sector remains one of the most important pillars of Iraq's economic modernization strategy. Strong financial institutions help mobilize savings, allocate capital efficiently, support entrepreneurship, and facilitate economic growth across multiple industries. Oil revenues continue providing substantial fiscal resources for Iraq. However, economists widely agree that long-term prosperity requires diversification beyond hydrocarbons. Expanding manufacturing, agriculture, logistics, tourism, technology, and private enterprise can reduce dependence on energy markets while creating more sustainable employment opportunities. Political stability becomes particularly important during diversification efforts because businesses making long-term investments seek predictable policy environments. Investors considering factories, logistics centers, technology parks, or industrial facilities typically evaluate regulatory consistency over many years rather than short-term political developments alone. The relationship between politics and economics therefore extends well beyond immediate market reactions. Stable institutions create conditions that encourage investment, while investment supports productivity, employment, and national income. Short-term expectations should also remain realistic. Even if Iraq completes its government, many additional economic objectives would continue requiring attention. Banking modernization, infrastructure development, judicial reforms, fiscal management, private sector expansion, public administration improvements, and investment promotion are all ongoing processes rather than single events. Economic transformation rarely occurs overnight. Countries generally experience gradual progress as reforms accumulate over several years. Individual policy decisions often build upon previous institutional improvements, eventually creating stronger and more resilient economic systems. For IQD followers, this perspective encourages patience and careful evaluation of official information. Rather than focusing exclusively on rumors or fixed timelines, it may be more useful to monitor confirmed developments involving banking reforms, fiscal policy, investment legislation, international partnerships, and central bank communications. The Washington meetings themselves remain important because they reinforce Iraq's engagement with international partners. Discussions involving financial cooperation, development assistance, investment opportunities, and institutional reforms can contribute positively to Iraq's long-term economic outlook. International organizations frequently emphasize governance, transparency, fiscal discipline, banking supervision, and economic diversification when supporting emerging economies. Progress in these areas tends to strengthen investor confidence over time. Foreign direct investment represents another significant consideration. International companies evaluating opportunities in Iraq typically examine political stability alongside market potential. Iraq possesses considerable natural resources, a strategic geographic location, a relatively young population, and opportunities across multiple sectors beyond oil. As governance improves and regulatory certainty increases, Iraq may become increasingly attractive for international investment partnerships. Such investment can introduce capital, technology, management expertise, and employment opportunities that contribute to long-term economic growth. It is equally important to understand that exchange rates reflect multiple economic variables simultaneously. Inflation, interest rates, productivity, balance of payments, foreign reserves, fiscal conditions, external debt, trade competitiveness, and monetary policy all influence currency valuation. Consequently, no single political event alone determines a nation's exchange rate. Sustainable currency strength typically reflects broader economic fundamentals supported by stable institutions and prudent policymaking. The Central Bank of Iraq continues playing a central role in maintaining financial stability. Central banks generally prioritize price stability, reserve management, banking supervision, payment system integrity, and monetary policy effectiveness. Their decisions are usually based upon comprehensive economic data rather than speculation. This institutional framework is one reason official announcements remain far more reliable than rumors circulating through social media or online discussion groups. Responsible analysis always distinguishes between verified information and personal interpretation. The phrase describing government completion as the golden peace reflects the opinion that political completion unlocks broader reforms. While this perspective has gained attention among some observers, viewers should remember that Iraq's economic future depends upon many interconnected reforms, rather than one isolated milestone. Successful economies generally combine effective governance, independent monetary policy, responsible fiscal management, strong banking institutions, productive private sectors, quality infrastructure, educated workforces, and attractive investment environments. Iraq continues working toward many of these objectives simultaneously. For those monitoring the Iraqi dinar, perhaps the most constructive approach is maintaining a balanced perspective. Positive political developments deserve attention because they can improve the environment for economic progress. At the same time, expectations should remain grounded in official announcements and measurable economic indicators, rather than assumptions about specific timelines. The coming months will likely continue bringing developments involving Iraq's government, banking reforms, regional partnerships, energy cooperation, and investment initiatives. Each of these areas contributes to the broader picture of Iraq's economic evolution. Rather than viewing any single event as a guaranteed turning point, it may be more accurate to see Iraq's progress as the result of many reforms advancing together. Political stability, institutional modernization, banking development, regulatory improvements, and economic diversification collectively strengthen the country's long-term prospects. For international observers, the most meaningful indicators to monitor include official central bank statements, government budget implementation, banking sector modernization, foreign investment activity, infrastructure projects, non-oil economic growth, and continued cooperation with international financial institutions. If these areas continue improving over time, they could contribute to stronger economic fundamentals and greater confidence in Iraq's future. However, responsible financial analysis requires acknowledging that economic progress is typically gradual, influenced by domestic policies, global market conditions, regional developments, and institutional effectiveness. In summary, the latest commentary highlights the belief that completing Iraq's government represents an important milestone before broader economic progress can accelerate. While that perspective reflects one analyst's interpretation rather than official policy, the underlying principle that political stability supports economic development is widely recognized by economists and investors alike. As Iraq continues strengthening its institutions, modernizing its banking system, expanding international partnerships, and implementing economic reforms, these developments will remain important for anyone following the country's financial future. The relationship between governance and economics is complex, but stable institutions consistently provide stronger foundations for sustainable growth than uncertainty or prolonged political transition. We will continue monitoring official announcements from Iraqi authorities, the Central Bank of Iraq, and other credible institutions, so that you receive balanced, factual, and responsible coverage of the developments that matter most. If you found this analysis helpful, remember to subscribe to Iraqi Dinar News and like the video for more responsible and fact-based updates on Iraq's economy and the Iraqi dinar. As always, this content is provided for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered financial, investment, or legal advice. Always conduct your own research and consult qualified financial professionals before making any investment decisions.